welcome you guys to a little yoga Pilates fusion. So, as is my general we're gonna start lying down so we can do some breath awareness and do a little work with expanding the ribs, getting a little extra movement in the secondary breathing muscles. So you can do that just by, simply lying down. Lie down on the floor. Lay down on the floor. Pretty sure it's lay down and then you will be lying there. Pretty sure that's the way it goes. But in any case, me correcting myself. Alrighty. So we're going to do that. Or you can, if you want to add on to it, you can take a blanket and kind of roll it up so that you've got a little bit of an elevation. So the shoulders kind of drop around the blanket. And I find that useful because I'm a side sleeper. And so these muscles tighten up as I sleep, and access to them is better if I have a little extra lift. Oh. Now, once you've gotten yourself into position, that way you can decide whether you want to do a constructive rest position with the legs. This will allow the hip flexors to relax. So if you generally have tight hip flexors, this is a nice way to kind of allow the hip flexor to relax deeper into the back. You can straighten the legs out. For me, what that does is it kind of lifts the ribs a little bit more because, again, hip flexors. So this is not as much a release for the hip flexors as much as it is like a little bit more of a back bend. So it turns me into almost more of a fish pose kind of back bend, which is sort of like cobra upside down. Or you can do a little butterfly shape with the legs if you want to kind of find somewhere in the middle where there's some stretchiness happening, but it may not be quite as much of a pull. Like the hip flexors might have a little bit more room. So picking one of those for yourself, and then allowing the body to settle a little bit so that you can focus on your breath. I'm trying to expand my lungs as much as possible, like let the diaphragm move as much as possible, but also kind of paying attention to the secondary breathing muscles, which are the little muscles in between the ribs. My little illustration with my fingers. And then the pectoralis minor, which connects the side of the rib cage through the arm joint to the back, to the shoulder blade, on the inside of the shoulder. So trying to give a little bit of space to both of those as well. Sort of aim the breath by doing different things with my abdominal muscles. So if I allow the abdominal muscles to mostly relax, the diaphragm will push down a little bit more. It'll pull the bottoms of the lungs a little bit so they really fill up. If I want to move these muscles a little bit more, then I can gently restrict the abdominals so that in order to get that big deep breath, the ribs have to move and the chest has to move a little bit. Also just notice what's the more comfortable way to breathe. So we'll do like another 3 or 4 breaths here. If your knees are apart, you can bring those together. If your legs are straight, you can bring them in. We're gonna gently release anything out from under the back. And then keeping the feet resting on the floor, about constructive rest position, So a little farther away maybe than you would for bridge pose. We're going to start just a little side-to-side windshield wiper move. And then when you get back to the center, just wiggle the feet a little tiny bit further out and do it again. And then when you get back to the center, see if there's a little bit bigger space that you can take up. So the feet are a little wider apart. There's going to be a point where this stops. There's not going to be any more room to get wider. And so when you get to there, you can just pause. I'm going to do one more on that side. And then bring the legs over for a twist. So you can wrap one leg around the other, stack the legs up, throw a little extra prop in underneath or between the knees. I just adjust my upper back so it's as level as possible. And then I'm trying to create more room between my hip and my rib. So I'm sort of gently trying to stretch my hip away from the rib cage there just a little bit to make a little bit more space in those muscles there on the side. So I'm going to take one more breath. And then I'm going to use that top leg to come back. Put the feet back on the floor. I'm going to start with that widest position. Little windshield wiper. Back and forth. I like to see like how far in my knee will drop before trouble arrives, right? So at some point the hip will stop moving and you'll feel that start to radiate down that side of your thigh. So you just pause right before that point. Okay, so then the next time I'm heading in that direction, I'm going to twist the other way. Get my upper back on there and then decide like how you want your legs to go. And then see if you can make a little bit more space between this hip and rib on that side. Sometimes one side's a little more stubborn than the other. Don't forget to breathe. Nice deep breaths. One more nice big breath. And then we're coming back to the middle. Now, I'm going to just kind of wiggle as I go back and forth here. I'm just going to wiggle the feet back in until I've got them back into that little constructive rest position. Now, I'm going to put my right ankle up on top of my left thigh. You can leave the legs here, or you can lift the legs up once we get going. We're going to do two little warm-up moves for the abdominals. So we're going to curl straight up and then curling opposite elbow and knee towards each other like that, okay? So floating, I would curl straight up and then twist, or letting the legs rest, same idea, straight up and twist. Now for those of us that tend to pull from the neck, this is an exercise in not pulling from the neck. So we're pressing the head back into the hands, really making the abdominals do this little warm up, okay? And then for those of us that are not as likely to do that, like you've kind of anchored yourself pretty well, then you could do the little floatier leg and add a little bit more challenge onto it. So just curling up and twisting. Curling up and twisting. We're going to do it twice more. Keep kind of pressing the head into the hands. So we're getting ourselves that little extra bit of practice in not using the neck when the abdominals should be doing the work. Okay, so then we're going to switch legs, same idea. Again, you can float the legs if you like. Head presses back, curl up, and then twist. And then twist. It's not a big move, we're just warming things up. Trying to get in the habit of feeling ourselves doing work from the abs. It's not easy to do this and talk at the same time, so I'm going to stop talking. We're going to do two more. you're down, you can unwind the legs. And so hopefully everything feels a little bit warmer, a little bit looser around the side waist and the back. So we're going to do a little work for the hip flexors. So kind of in a similar vein, we're going to bring the hands behind the head. I've got my feet in constructive rest. I'm going to lift my toes up, stretch out through the right leg. So now I've got this long stretch, and that's what I'm really interested in. And then curling up, bringing that knee in, stretching it out. Oh, really give a good long stretch to the hip. Curl it in, stretch it out, curl it in. Now, I'm going to stretch the leg out. Toes are pointing straight up for right now. Then I'm going to rotate them out to the right and then bring the knee to the right elbow. Doesn't have to land perfectly. Toes straight up, stretch out through the front of the hip, rotate to the outside, curl in. Toes straight up, stretch through that leg, rotate to the outside, curl in. All right, so now same idea but opposite direction. Toes are pointing straight up. Curl them in, twist up. Toes are straight up, rotate in, curl up. So I'm rotating from the thigh bone as best I can. Toes straight up, rotate that thigh bone in, everything comes across. Good, pause right there. Now reach out through that leg one more time. Give it a good long reach. Try to feel, the front of that right hip stretching out, and then let that leg come back where it came from. Notice if there's any difference in sensation between your right side and your left side. We're going to pick up the left toe, stretch that leg all the way out. Nice long stretch through the front of the hip, and then curl in. So toes straight up for these first 3 rounds. Stretch, curl in, stretch out, curl in. So stretching out, we're going to rotate outward, external rotation to the left elbow. Toes straight up. Rotate the thigh, bring it in. Okay, once again, we're going straight up. Rotate the thigh, now bring it in. All right, so now we're going across. So start with the toes pointing up, internally rotate, bring it across the body. Toes up, internally rotate, bring it across. One more time, toes up, stretch the front of that hip, turn it in, bring it across. Now we can let go of the head. We're going to stretch that left leg all the way out. Try to feel the front of that left hip really let go. And then bring the left foot in. So now just pausing for a moment and seeing as this settles, does it feel a little bit more even? Maybe there was no difference to begin with, but maybe there was. All right, grab hold of your right leg. Give your left leg a nice long stretch. Now you can leave that left leg as it is. Hover it up. We're going to curl up towards this right leg. We're going to give it a little extra, and then stretch the right leg out. Left leg comes in. Give it a little extra curl. And again, we're trying not to curl from the neck, but instead to curl from the abdominals, right? So you're either going to, one leg is going to rest on the floor and you're going to curl, and then the other leg curl, and then the other side curl, or you're going to hover. Good. Curl in that little extra bit from the abs. Good. 2 more. Stretching through the leg that you're not curling toward. Now bring it on in. Grab your left leg. Give that guy a hug. Stretch that right leg out. All right. Stretch both legs out. We're going to give it a big fingertip to toe tip stretch. All right, bring both knees in, bring your curl up. Now you can begin with your hands behind your head or your hands down by your ankles. We're going to extend the arms and legs, curl up. If you need, you can leave your hands back here, just extend the legs so that you can maintain the position with your neck and then use the abdominals. So if your neck is a little dicey, leave your hands there. You can do this as well, where you sort of give yourself that chance to catch the neck along the way. So just working at what's appropriate for you. Good morning. 3 more. 2 more. Last one. Oh. All right, so we're gonna bring the feet to the ground. Give yourself a little moment here. It could be windshield wipers. You could pull your knees into your chest. We're gonna give ourselves one more big breath, one more big stretch. All right, we got one more piece of business to do here. Oh. And that is some leg lowers. So you can bring your hands back behind your head, press your head back, lift the shoulders up off the mat, or you can leave the shoulders down and put the arms either in underneath the hips or beside. We're going to anchor nice and firm. So we're hugging in the sides of the waist and holding the low back curve in its nice neutral position. So I'm not trying to flatten it out. I'm just trying to hold it as steady as I can. So the legs are going to come up. Glue the heels together, glue the thighs together as best you can. There's a little it's hard to hold those together. You can put like a little yoga block or something in between your shins to hold on to. We're going to reach through the feet and spread the toes out. Lower the legs down for a count of 4, 3, 2, 1. We're going to pause right there, draw everything in. 3, 2, 1, and then come on back. All right, here we go. 4, 3, 2, 1, hold. 3, 2, 1, come back. Lower. 2, 3, 4, and hold. 3, 2, 1, come back. Lower. 3, 2, 1, hold. 3, 2, 1, come back. Lower. 3, 2, 1, hold. 3, 2, 1, come back. 2 more. Lower. 3, 2, 1, and hold. 3, 2, 1, come back. Last one. Lower. 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4, come on back. Release your hands or your head, whichever is the right answer. Stretch out nice and long. Give yourself some little windshield wipers or a back massage. Whatever seems like the right answer. All right, we're gonna flip ourselves upside down, essentially like a little pancake. So I'm just gonna scoot all the way over. You might have to even go off your mat a little bit, so you can just roll over. All right, so we're gonna put the palms right under the shoulders, put the forehead on the floor, and reach out through the legs and press them down into the ground. And then inhale and lift into cobra. Now, I'm doing that with the back muscles, using the arms to provide some resistance. So, as I push the palm into the floor, I'm gonna broaden through the collarbone, draw the elbow inward. Okay? So I broaden out across this portion of the chest. That's what makes it a cobra. Slide the hands back a little, press the palms down, lift, broaden across the collarbones. Good. Coming back down, slide the hands back, press the legs down, lift, broaden through the collarbones. And then one more time, bringing the hands back a little bit more, as much as you can. Lift, broaden the collarbones. Now we're going to try to hold the lift, put the hands up a little higher, bring the right shoulder forward and up and the left shoulder down and in, and then switch. You can look the opposite way. So left shoulder goes up, I move my head to the right to make room. Same thing on the other side. Oh. Just back and forth with the shoulders. One more time on the other side. Oh. And then we're going to come back down. Now you can go up and into a child's pose. You can come to an all fours position and do a few rounds of cat. Or you can go to a downward dog position and walk. Take your dog for a walk. So whichever of those seems like a better idea to you today. And then we're going to meet ourselves up in a standing position at the top of the mat. So however you get there, oh, will be just fine. So once you get to the top of your mat and you're ready, we're going to turn the toes forward. Find a position that feels like your feet kind of fall out of your hips, fall out from under your hips. So not too tight together, not too wide apart. Just feeling kind of balanced. Spread out the toes, try to evenly distribute the weight between the heel and the ball of the foot, and between the inside arch and the outside arch of the foot. So we're finding that balanced place, and then soften through the knees a little bit and relax the shoulders. So that the mountain pose becomes a pose that's really about standing equally on both feet and front to back. I'm going to take a nice big inhale. You could stretch in whatever way your space requirements allow. Fold forward, come up halfway. So we're going to step back with the step back with the left foot, and we're going to start with a lunging position. You can rest your hands on the floor. If that's tricky, then you could put your hands on blocks. So we're going to stay a little low. So I've got my heel back and my knee forward so that the knee is either over the ankle or not quite over the ankle, but not past it. So I want a little bit of room here so I can stretch the knee forward and the heel back. And then I'm going to straighten out the front leg and see if I can send my heel down toward the floor for a little bit more of a calf stretch. You can modify this by simply not doing this extra work, stretching forward, or choosing a warrior one position with your feet instead might work. Press down through the heel. And then one more time, knee goes forward, heel goes back. So I'm feeling that length through the hip flexor, and then lifting the hips up, sending the heel down, maybe feeling that a little bit more through the calf muscles and the hamstrings. All right, so we're going to take this left foot, bring it in just a little bit, turn it slightly to the outside, and then we're going to bring ourselves to a diagonal. So I want to keep this front knee moving forward, so if it starts to collapse inward, pay attention to that. So you want to find the diagonal that works best and resist that kind of inward collapse. Now, you can reach, I've got blocks, but you can do this on the floor. You're going to reach your arms as far forward as you can, so we've got a little bit of a humble warrior, bowing warrior. Press the feet into the mat, kind of spread your toes apart and put them back down. And now we're going to use this kind of shape to roll ourselves up. So bringing your hands, if you like, to your thigh and your hip to create a little bit more stability. We're going to try to roll up. All right, so I'm pointing a little bit to the diagonal, but not as much as I would if I were doing a warrior two. So we're going to stretch out nice and long. We're going to reach out, kind of go into that diagonal. You can pause at the bottom, either the hands on the blocks or the hands on the floor. And then we're going to roll ourselves up as best we can, one vertebrae at a time. So we're mimicking the actions of the spine stretch that you might know from Pilates classes. Take a nice big breath, stretch out nice and long, pausing there to get that little humble bow. And then we're going to roll ourselves up one more time. Now we're going to try to take this into a balancing pose. So I'm going to put my right hand on the floor. You can use a block if you like. And then I'm going to wiggle my left foot in enough that it becomes a little easier to get that off the ground. Now if you need to hold on, and work the balance. If you fall, catch. Right? So we're going to try to stretch out. And some days balance is easier than others. And some days I feel like I'm going to crush things. And other days, not so crushy. So we're working with what we got and trying not to wreck any plants. Oh, there we go. Giving it a nice big stretch. We're going to bring that left leg in, put it down beside the right foot, come up halfway, fold, come all the way up to standing, give it a nice big stretch. Ooh. Okay, and then find that mountain pose again. Seeing if there's a difference between the right side and the left side. Ooh. Taking a nice big breath, reaching up, exhale, fold forward. We're going to step back with the right foot. And again, if your hands fit nicely onto the floor, that's great. And if they don't, if you have some books or some blocks, Tupperware containers, whatever you got. So this knee has a little bit of room to go forward, so it's not forward of the ankle. And this heel's got a little bit of room. So I'm going to stretch the knee forward, the heel back. Then I'm going to lift the hips. This leg straightens out part of the way. I'm going to press the heel down. See what that feels like. Come back, lunging, trying to feel that stretch through the front of the right hip. And then I'm going to let the hips lift. Send the heel back a little bit more. One more time, coming back to the lunge. Stretching through the front of that left hip, or right hip rather. Lifting, sinking into that right calf muscle stretch. Okay, so now I'm bringing the right foot into the warrior one position, taking the diagonal here. Again, I'm going to keep my blocks, but you may decide that you're going to let your hands just touch the ground again. Holding steady into that bowing warrior. Not so far to the diagonal that this knee begins to collapse inward. And then I'm going to roll myself up one vertebrae at a time, really concentrating on feeling the spine movement. Nice big breath, stretching out. Ooh. Pausing with that bow. And then rolling myself up. One more time. Nice big movement, reaching out. Ooh, whoops. Trying not to knock things over. I accuse my ferrets of knocking things over, and today it's going to be me. So I'm going to go into this balancing pose again. Whoa. Working it in. Taking myself up. Ooh. And then, if possible, letting go and balancing. And if today is not that day, we balance as best we can given the circumstances. Oh. Oh. All right, now we're going to step back to down dog. So, noticing the effect of that pose on both hips. Oh. Do they feel mostly even? Or are there some little places? Now, if you want to do some work with plank, you can hold that plank. You can hold a modified plank. You can certainly take one leg in the air. Ooh. And then switch it for the other one. And then take in one more breath. We're going to lower all the way down. All right. So we're going to do a little bit of work with locust. So again, we're going to work with the hands like a cobra, but we're going to lift the legs as well. So hands up nice and high. Plant the palms firmly. Lift the legs. Lift the torso. Draw the elbows back. Come on back down. Same idea. Slide the hands back. Lift the legs. Lift the torso. Elbows in and back. So we're broadening across the chest. Slide it back. Lift. Beautiful. Come on back down one more time. Slide it back. Lift. Nice. Okay. So we're going to come back to the Pilates with this little turn of the head. Now you can either lace your fingers together behind your back or place them down beside you, whichever is going to be the best position for your shoulders. We're going to bend the knees. We're going to kick the heels in 1, 2, 3. Then you're going to reach through the legs, lift, bring the head to the center, and draw everything towards the midline. Bring the opposite cheek to the ground, and then heels in 1, 2, 3. Lift, everything draws inward. Opposite cheek, 1, 2, 3. Lift, and down, 1, 2, 3. Lift and lengthen, and down, 1, 2, 3. Lift and lengthen. And down. 1, 2, 3. Lift and lengthen. Come down. We're going to do twice more. 1, 2, 3. Lift. And down. 1, 2, 3. Lift. And down. All right. Now, you can come back to an all-fours position, a child's pose, or a downward dog. We're going to use this as a transition point to bring the right leg forward for a pigeon. Now, there's a couple different pigeon options. So the fuller version, and one leg pigeon, is going to be to bring that right leg forward, slide the left leg back. The foot can be in closer. This is just where mine needs to land. You can put support under the hip. So that's possibility number 1. You can keep it more of a back bend by staying propped up. You can make it a little bit less of a back bend by folding forward in some way. This one's not going to work. There's a couple of other options. So option number 2 is to do more of a seated version where you prop one leg up on top of the other. And then the last option is a reclining version where you rest on the floor and bring the legs in, okay? So you just want to pick the one that's going to do the best job for you today, given the circumstances. And you can use props to sort of modify that position for yourself. So we're going to stay here for about 6 or so, 8 breaths, somewhere in that neighborhood. Depends on how deeply you breathe, yogis. So breathing as best we can. It's a little deeper stretch. So we've got the hip flexors potentially on the leg in the back, depending on the option that we're doing. And then the hip flexors have a little companion, which is the piriformis. Now, there's a lot of other muscles in these same areas that do jobs that work together. These are the 2 primary movers of this particular idea. So the hip flexor stabilizes the pelvis in one direction, and the piriformis stabilizes the pelvis in the other direction. Both connect the spine to the femur, as well as some other bits in the pelvis. So the muscle that we're trying to kind of aim for that lives up in underneath the glutes connects the sacrum to the thigh bone, and then the hip flexor connects the vertebral column to the thigh via the hip. So it goes over the front of the hip and connects to the thigh. So we're getting these muscles that are really important for us being able to walk on 2 legs. So we're going to take a nice big breath. So to come out of this, it depends on which version you're doing. But if you're doing this version where you've got one leg up front, we're going to come out of this by kind of rolling to that right side and then bringing that right leg all the way out. We're going to come onto our side. So with the hips stacked on top of each other and the shoulders stacked on top of each other, we'll be using the left leg. So however you configured yourself, lay on your right side, position your head so that your neck is in a neutral position, lift through the abdominals and hug in through the side waist, and then we're going to take this left leg and rotate it outwardly. So you can rotate both legs and even hover them, or you can press that bottom leg into the floor. You can even bend that bottom knee for a bigger amount of support. So we're going to lift that left leg like a little bit, a little higher than hip height, and we're going to circle that leg, trying to keep the toes lifted in that external rotation. So we're keeping that thigh bone rotated outward. So this little lump on the side of the thigh kind of blends into the glutes when we do that. Okay, so pause there. We're going to rotate the leg the other way without letting the hip fall forward. Now you might be able to feel that greater trochanter, that little bubble of bone right there on the outer thigh. So now we're going to rotate the opposite direction, or whatever way. If you don't remember what opposite what is, just circle your leg. It'll be fine. So we're just keeping that internal rotation as best we can, keeping the hips and the shoulders and the abdominals steady. All right, so now bringing the legs together, we're going to turn them back to that external rotation. We're going to take the leg up, bring it down. We're going to swing that leg forward, bring it back, go up, bring it down, swing it backwards, and come back. So we're going to do an up in between, and then a forward and up and a backward. We'll do that twice more. Up, forward, up, backward. One more. Up, forward, up, backward. Now we're going to go up one more time, and then bringing the heels together, we're going to bring them behind us and then lift the heels. So the knees stay low, heels are up high. Notice if your hip dropped forward, see if you can reestablish that balance, lift through the sides of both waists. And then we're going to open the knees, extend that leg, bring it back, and close it up. And hopefully we're kind of giving this outer part of our left hip a little bit of delicious torture while we're at it. You might even, as we close this up, feel that movement with that internal rotator there. So, I'm going to try to do 5 more of these. I'll try to count. You can if you want to. 2 more. And the last one. All right, so then we're going to bring the legs back out straight. We're going to swing that top leg forward. You can leave it straight. You can bend the knee. You can put the foot on the floor or not. Just make sure your hips are still stacked and your shoulders are still stacked. Lift through the side of your right waist and hug in that left side waist and lift your right leg up. So now we're going to work the inner thighs and hip flexors to a degree. So we're going to pulse that leg up for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold steady and see if you can lift a little bit higher with that deep inner belly. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Don't let that leg drop. 4, 3, 2, 1. And then we're going to bring it down nice and slow. Take that left leg back. We're going to roll all the way back over. Now, however you got into your pigeon last time, you're going to get into your pigeon again this way. I'm going to turn around so that I'll be in proper position for the other side. So I won't have to talk to the window. Okay. So whatever version of the pigeon you did last time, you'll do again this time on the other side. Just noticing your breath, noticing the places that feel a little bit on the tight side today. If there are any, there almost always are for me. I'm going to do about 4 or 5 more breaths. So take a nice big inhale, and then we're going to come out of the pose, and eventually we're going to wind up laying on the left side. Okay. So hips are stacked, shoulders are stacked, lifting through the sides of the waist. You can hover the legs to make that a little bit more challenging. Again, you can bend that bottom knee. So we're going to take this leg externally rotate, and I like to do both. I just turn both thighs that way so the toes are separated, and then lift the leg a little higher than hip height, and we're going to circle that leg, trying to hold steady through the abdominals. So that's the ab work, is stabilizing, and then the resistance here, and then we're also working these muscles that operate our outer hip, gluteus medius and friends. All right, pause there. We're gonna rotate the other way, and I like to do both legs again. So I rotate the bottom leg and the top leg, and then circling it the opposite direction. That's the one. And then holding steady as best you can. I find this one harder to hold myself steady. It wants to wiggle me a little bit more because it's a little more effort, I think, to maintain that internal rotation. So notice what's true for you. Okay. Last one here. Then we're gonna bring the legs together. Okay, so turning the top leg so that it's, you know, pointing a little bit more in the lifting area. External rotation, that's what I'm trying to say. We're gonna lift the leg up, come on back to about that hip height position, swing it forward, lift the leg up, come on back to that hip height position, swing the leg back. We're trying to maintain that stability in the body the whole time. So I'm really anchoring through the abdominals to try to maintain that stability. 3 more. Last set here. Now, I'm going to come back to the center. I'll go up one more time as my heels come together. I'm going to swing those around behind me. So hips are stacked, knees are down, heels are high, knees open. You might extend that leg. You might just leave it and hover. It depends on how your hip is feeling about all this work we've been doing. Good. Halfway through now. We're going to do 4 more. And last one. So we're going to stretch the legs out, bring that top leg forward, position it so that it works best for you. That bottom leg is going to lift. I'm going to hug in through the sides of my waist, pulse that leg up for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now hold steady right there and lift a little higher. Try to lift deep in the belly. Hold it for 10, 9, 8, 7. Don't let that thing drop. Lift. 4, 3, 2. Hold on. 1. And then come on down. We're going to roll onto our back. Oh. Give yourself a moment just to kind of notice where you landed. Give yourself maybe those little windshield wipers from the beginning or a little back massage. Oh, we're going to stretch the legs out. Oh, when you're ready, give it a big long reach. Now, you could do the teaser from here. So from this long extended position, coming to a boat pose, coming back to this long extended position, coming to a boat pose. So all of that. For some people, it's really tough on the low back. So if you want to, you can follow me. We're going to come up and take ourselves into a boat pose, and we'll just maintain the boat. So coming up, lifting. We can give ourselves a chance to just kind of open this up and close it up. Open it and close it. You can also just hold the boat and maintain. You can do a little pulsing to 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to hold on to my big toes. Oh. And try to straighten the legs. You got to lift your heart, you guys. You don't keep your heart up, this gets roly-poly. So for our friends who are doing the teaser, do 2 more. Unless you've had enough. And then don't do 2 more. Keep lifting. I'm going to take the legs out a little wider, try to stay balanced. Ooh. Ooh. Now, when you're done with your teaser, you're going to come up to a seated position. I don't know if you're done yet, but in the event that you are, we're going to come to a seated position. Put your feet together so you've got a little butterfly shape. Now you can pull the heels in really tight or leave them a little bit looser. I go for a little bit more of a diamond so that I can get a little bit of movement. So I'm sending my sit bone back, lifting, sending the sit bone back, lifting, sending the sit bone back, and slowly I'm bringing the pelvis forward so that I'm not rounding in my back so much as moving the pelvis forward. Now this may or may not work out for everyone. So kind of find the way in, and then I bring the feet in a little bit from there, wherever it feels like is okay for the knees and the hip joints. And so hold and steady with a little butterfly shape. Now you can let your back round, it's an option. If you have any lower back disc issues, don't round your lower back. Like keep it a little bit more lengthened, pull your abs in, hold steady through that area so that you give your discs a chance to heal themselves rather than continue to put pressure on the parts that are ouchy. Usually for people, forward bending is the trickiest one in that condition. There are some exceptions to that rule, of course. Okay, so we're going to take 2 more breaths with the butterfly shape, whichever version of that you're doing, whether it's the cobbler's pose, bound angle version, or this thing that I do, which is more akin to a turtle. It's baby turtle, maybe. All right, so when you're ready, you're going to come up. We're going to take the legs out into a V. So hold and steady with the V. You're going to turn the toes straight up, so we've got a little bit of an internal rotation through the thighs. Some of us, when the legs go wide, the pelvis goes backwards. You have a couple of options. Option 1 is not as wide with the legs. Option 2 is to elevate the hips and see if that helps. Okay, sit up on the edge of a blanket or 2. So we're going to keep the toes pointing up. We're going to turn towards the left leg and notice when that right hip starts to lift. See if you can let that right hip stay grounded and just do the twist with the upper portion of your back so that we're not forcing the sacrum to move much. Right on? Now if this causes any discomfort with your low back, let your hip lift a little bit. Some sacroiliac joint dysfunctions, it's best to just let the hip go. I like to try to isolate this twist into my upper back because that's where I'm really trying to get the movement, is in this tight muscle area around my middle back. Now as my body allows, I'm twisting a little bit more just through this upper portion of my spine where the ribs live. Not overdoing it with my neck. I'm really trying to focus that twist between my collarbones and my navel. Oh, but in the back. Between the C7 and the T12. Or maybe T11. Okay, so I'm still working with the legs. So I'm going to release the twist a little bit, fold forward over my left leg. Now, if you wanted to, you could bend this right knee and bring the foot into the center. Again, my foot is still up here. If you wanted to, you could reach out and grab hold of that foot if it feels like a good handle. I'm spreading my toes out, trying to get a little energy, picking my kneecap up, engaging through the quad. Now I'm going to come up, rotate my torso so I can come back in, and then make that into a side bend. Come up. I'm going to turn this into the mermaid by bending my left knee and then bringing my right leg around as well. So this automatically sort of sets us up in a funny little way. So adjust your legs until it feels like you're more balanced. We're going to stretch over the edge and then come on back up. Reach over the edge and up and stretch. Over, up, definitely bigger. Over, up, oh yeah, that's better. Over, up, oh. I just experiment with the direction of movement until I find the one that feels the most free. Bring in the legs back, pointing the toes up, finding that position where the pelvis seems nice and level. Taking a big breath. Oh, I'm letting this kind of movement, fluid movement from my spine kind of settle. And then I'm going to start my rotation in the other direction. And again, there's a point where you'll feel the left hip start to shift forward, just pause when you get to that point and just let everything settle. Again, there's nothing wrong with that hip helping unless you want to isolate the twist in your spine. So allowing the hip to help a little bit if you've got some issues there, but mostly trying to anchor this twist into the back. Taking some nice deep breaths. So I'm going to take one more moment in this twist. And then we're going to come out just enough to fold forward over this right leg. Again, you could reach out for your foot if you wanted to, but you don't have to. Keeping the toes pointing up, I'm spreading them apart. Again, being mindful of how far forward your pelvis moves, keeping the spine nice and long as best you can. Now we're going to come up, rotate the torso, come into the side bends. We're sort of prepping for the mermaid here. Give ourselves some length through the side waist. So we're going to come up, we're going to bring the legs around so that we're sort of anchored into the mermaid shape, whatever mermaid version works best for you. Side bending out and then coming back and bringing that side up. So we're lengthening through both sides. Yogis, we're going to do it one more time. Bringing ourselves back, bringing the legs around. This is where you have to ask yourself the question, Shavasana or legs up the wall? Because you could do either. You're at your house, you get to decide. So I'm going to do Shavasana because I don't have a wall nearby. But if you had a wall nearby, or you wanted to scoot your butt up over to the edge of a chair or couch and throw your legs up on the couch, you could do it that way too. All right, so gave myself a chance to have one little extra boat pose, a rolling down version of it, right there at the end. I feel like bonus boat poses are always welcome. So adjust your body so that you can relax. Whichever version you're doing, legs up the wall, which is a nice inversion, helps lower the, like all of the yoga that we do, but especially inversions can help lower the amount of stress hormone that's in our bloodstream. We're not totally sure of the mechanism, but some interesting studies have been done in India where they swabbed people's cheeks, tested their hormone levels, put them in an inversion, and then tested again, and almost everyone showed a reduction, some people dramatically so, not as many, not everyone was dramatically different, but it was interesting enough that they kept doing it with larger and larger sample sizes. It seems an interesting notion. Now, that being said, I can't guarantee anything, but if you just let yourself relax, that in and of itself is what the final pose is all about, is that we're trying to let the nervous system completely stop being vigilant, completely shift into that parasympathetic state. So for just a few minutes, we allow the parasympathetic nervous system to take over. So it's really important that you relax the face, especially the orbits of the eye and the mouth. Let your teeth part a little bit, let your lips get a little softer. Bring some kindness to your eyes. You can even audibly sigh a few times. because the vagus nerve that's part of the parasympathetic nervous system, and one of the longest kind of neural pathways in the body, it comes through the larynx. So when we make an audible sound, we might stimulate a little bit of a relaxation in that nerve. And then really allowing all the muscles to relax. If you don't feel safe laying on your back, you can do this on your side or on your belly as well. The important part is that you let go. So without moving yet, just notice your breath again. We're going to take a breath so deep we can feel it all the way to the tiptoes. Let go with a big sigh. And you can wiggle your fingers and toes, wrist and ankles. Give yourself a nice big stretch. Curl up in a ball. All the things that feel good. Thank you so much for joining me today for a little Yoga Pilates fusion. We're going to take a big breath together. Nice big inhale. Big deep sigh.